Hi, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic webinar in our Innovator series. My name is Liza Hausman. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for the industry team here at House, working with all of the pros in our community. And I'm excited to bring to you today a terrific webinar that's going to bring you best practices on following up with new potential clients. Our guest today is Meredith Oliver. She's a nationally recognized sales and marketing strategist. She is an NAHB National Sales and Marketing Council board member and a regular speaker at IBS. And we're very excited to have her here today to share some of the best practices that she has really developed over time and that she speaks about regularly. So a little bit of housekeeping before she gets started. We have a chat function on the right-hand side. So if you have questions or issues, technical issues, you can enter them on the right-hand side. We'll try to get to some of your questions at the end of this webinar. If we don't get to your question, we'll make sure that we follow up with you individually and get you an answer after the webinar. So thanks again for joining us. And with that, Meredith, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to be here and glad that you guys reached out to me and we found each other on the internet. Imagine that. So
too fun.
Right. So for the last 17 years, I've been working with home builders and remodelers and custom builders to build their business online, primarily with digital marketing. And certainly House is one of the tools that should be in all of their tool chests that they use and many of our clients do. So it was definitely a natural to say yes to participate in your webinar series, and I appreciate the invitation.
Well, we're excited to have you.
Thanks. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I've been doing digital marketing since just about the beginning of the internet. Yes, I'm that old and I wish I wasn't. But I've written some books on the subject and specialized in residential new home construction and remodeling all of these years. Actually started out at a .com company. Back then it was called homebuilder.com. And it was the sister company to realtor.com, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with and heard of. And at homebuilder.com, my job was to call on builders and ask them to advertise on the digital channel through listings and banners and all kinds of things. And it's gone through many evolutions and it's a different company and name now. It's not the same anymore. But what I learned from that experience was we didn't know a lot about digital marketing and its power back in those early days. And B, once you do start driving a lot of traffic and inquiries, and you start getting those inquiries through your website, you have to follow up on them to really capitalize on them to see those turn into future customers. So after working with, I don't know, hundreds of home builders over the years, come up with a series of best practices on how to make your follow-up more fantastic. I'll tell you why I say it that way in just a minute. And ultimately, as you see on the screen, the idea is by the end of this webinar, you'll have some concrete takeaways that will help you send more money straight to the bottom line by converting more of those leads into phone calls, into appointments, and eventually into signed contracts and customers. So in order to be able to do that, first I have to introduce you to Homebuyer 2.0. Homebuyer 2.0, who's that? Oh, let me tell you. Homebuyer 2.0 is a customer that primarily uses digital channels to do all of their research on the products and services that they are going to buy. And we know that overwhelmingly people go online to search for a remodeler or for a custom home builder or to find a piece of land to build their next home. They are going to use those digital channels. You know, House was kind enough to provide me this research, which is staggering number, right? 97% are searching online for local businesses. And you indeed are going to miss out on business if you don't have that strong online presence. But it's not just that they use digital channels. I know you've heard that before. And you might be thinking to yourself, yeah, I know that. What else do you have for me? Well, it's how you apply that knowledge that really makes a difference. So I like to call it the paradox of Homebuyer 2.0. And it's this paradox of, on the one hand, don't talk to me, leave me alone, because I can find everything I want on the internet. So the attitude can be, or tends to be, don't try to sell me anything. And if you start selling, if you start pitching, if I start feeling the pressure, if you start pursuing me too much, I'm going to tune you out, because I can just simply hit delete in my inbox, or I can hit unfollow on Facebook, or I can stop looking at your idea book on Houzz if I want to. There's ways that I can filter you out. But on the other hand, and here's the point that most of the pros miss, is this pay me attention. So you might think, okay, so I don't want to do follow-up because it's don't talk to me, leave me alone. But the other side of the same coin with Homebuyer 2.0 is that when they are ready, when they want to talk to you, and generally that is about the time that they go in through Houzz and leave you a message, send you a question or an inquiry, and say, I'd like to know more about this project, or I'd like to know what paint color you used in this project, or I'd like to know more about that particular floor plan. At that point, we're no longer on don't talk to me. Now we're on pay me attention, and I want it now. Of course, right? It's crazy. I want it now. So you've got to switch gears and know that by the time they get to you and they reach out, and it's sort of a virtual raising of the hand, and it says, hey, I want to know more. Tell me. This now, you can't be too fast. You can't do too much follow-up. You can't be too personalized, because they're finally ready. So don't assume that everybody you talk to is don't talk to me. That's maybe the earlier phase of their research. By now, we're to pay me attention. And you're like, yeah, okay, Meredith, I kind of buy that. But here's the thing. I email these people, I respond to them, and I never hear anything. Like, it's crickets. So I don't really buy into pay me attention, like they're ready and they're going to respond to me. That's where I can help you today. Because the other thing you need to know about Homebuyer 2.0 is it's really all about them. And if the follow-up you're doing is about you, your brand, your company, you, and it's not about them, and it doesn't feel personal, then you're still not going to get a response. And that's where we're going to really work today. The other thing that I want you to know about Homebuyer 2.0 and why a platform like Houzz is so powerful is we live in the age of visual communication. We live in a world where a Facebook post with a strong, compelling photo gallery or video, a compelling idea book on Houzz, those things will garner the most attention. They are what our eye goes to. And that's just simply because we're overwhelmed and we're inundated with information and with words and with text. And so we naturally, our brain is like, I can't take it anymore. I can't read any more words today. I've hit my limit. Ooh, pretty picture. It's like squirrel, and it draws our eye naturally. Homebuyer 2.0 loves photos. They love videos. They love imagery. And the more that you can use those in your marketing to pull them in to get leads, but as well as in the process of replying to them, the more that they're likely to engage with you.
Meredith, you make such a great point there. Obviously we've had the success that we have bringing homeowners and pros together on how to collaborate, because obviously it's so much easier to point to a picture of what you like than to try to
Mm-hmm.
describe it with vocabulary that you don't have. And so, 100%, it's great to use photos as a communication tool, and also to represent your business and your brand. And we can certainly follow up with folks after today with our photography best practices guide as well.
Oh, I'm sure that would be a very useful resource for them, because with our mobile phones, we do take more and more what I call amateur photography for our marketing, and it's okay in some uses, but I think in other uses it's worth the investment of professional photography. If you're going to be taking your own photography, then you definitely need to check out these best practices and make sure that what you're putting up represents you and your brand in the best possible light, because that is what they see is what they believe. That's the age of visual communication. It's not the words that we use as much as it is the visuals. So we want
Yeah, and
all of that to line up.
Yep, and I loved your point about people doing their research online. We kind of joke, because we hear from pros all the time that they'll often get reached out to by a homeowner on house who's actually been following them for a year before they ever reach out. They know everything about
Yeah.
that pro. They've saved their photos, right? They've done their research. We kind of jokingly call them the nice stalkers that you want to cultivate, right?
Yes.
Before these people have saved up and are ready to pull the trigger, they're out there doing all this research, and you may not even know they exist during all that time. So
Yeah.
putting your best digital face forward is incredibly important.
And that's honestly exactly why I developed the brand and the terminology I use, fantastic marketing, is that by the time they've been on your house site present a year, as you said, nicely stalking you, they're a fan already. They are a fan of your brand. They have built a relationship in their mind with you. And you, the pro, are at a disadvantage because you've never met this person. But in their mind, they're your BFF already. I know it sounds crazy, Liza, but it's true. So that's why I say it's fantastic marketing, because you're at this juncture, you're marketing to very warm leads, but I don't even like the words leads or prospects. I call them fans. Have they bought from you yet? No. But on some level, they feel there is a match between them or you, or they wouldn't be stalking you for a year. So this turtle just cracks me up. Yeah, I think he's kind of cute. And I like this slide because in this world where somebody has already developed a relationship with you and they've been watching your presence and looking at you for months and months, and they finally reach out to you, at that point, you can't be too fast with your response. All of the research says that literally, if you can respond within minutes, and I know that sounds intimidating when you're already super busy, but your response time will make or break whether you continue the dialogue or not. So again, think of these folks as people who are very familiar with you, who are interested. If they were standing in front of you, you wouldn't ask them to take a seat and I'll be back in an hour. Just because it's a virtual indication of I have an interest doesn't mean that it's any less interested than if somebody was standing in front of you in some kind of retail environment. So responding quickly is very important. The faster you respond, the more likely, all of the research proves, that you will continue the dialogue. So same day response is okay, but literally within minutes, within an hour would be better, would be gold standard. And we want to make it super easy for them, right? So as you're responding, making sure that your signature on your email has all of your contact information. So it's super easy to just hit your link of your phone and just start calling you instead of emailing you, which would be easier as far as a method of communication as a channel. So making sure that your presence on house has all of your information and is completely filled out, and you give people multiple ways to contact you. We'll talk more about channels in just a minute. That's really important. Okay, so how are we going?
Meredith.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, yeah.
That's right. No, that's okay because we've got some questions coming in, and I think this would be a good one to chime in here. How and I know you're going to talk about channels, but we publish a lot of the same information, and we totally agree. Right, getting back to people quickly, especially when they're doing this research, makes it much more likely that you're going to be able to move forward and potentially close that as a project. But a lot of pros are saying, "Gosh, I'm on a job site or I'm busy, it's not realistic for me to get back to somebody so quickly, or I'm trying to compartmentalize my day and make all my follow-up calls at the end of the day." What do you say to them?
Yeah, so if you're a one person show, I know it's going to be really hard to make it happen if you're in a meeting. And in those cases, you're just going to have to get to it and do it as quickly as you possibly can. If you have a team of whatever size, you can certainly delegate an initial response to somebody on your team who has a more flexible schedule and has the ability to drop basically what they're doing and get a quick response out. And that would be ideal. In larger size organizations, we develop an online sales counselor position where all inbound digital inquiries from all the channels are funneled through the online sales. You could call it online sales advisor, online sales counselor, and their sole job is to answer these and convert them into appointments. And that has proven to be a very profitable investment for most builders and remodelers. But if you're not at that size, then just figuring out a process and a workflow to do it as quickly as possible is gonna be the best you can do until you're of a larger size where you can do better.
And I just want to point out for folks that, absolutely builders and remodelers, but these same best practices apply whether you're an architect or an interior designer or anybody involved in building design or
Sure.
renovation.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to see this same principle, these same types of principles apply really any business that's bringing in inquiries and needs to respond to them. So we were talking about how to add value, and this is one of the ways that you will increase the response rate. So what happens pretty frequently is you'll get one of these requests in. A lot of times it's via email, and you're replying back, maybe not as fast as you need to be. So definitely that's the easiest tweak you could make that would have the biggest impact on your conversion rates. But let's say you are responding as quickly as possible. Then what are you responding with? What type of content are you responding with? And this would be true whether you're sending an email back, a text message, a phone call, whatever the response is. We want to increase the percentage of time that somebody actually goes into a dialogue with you. You have the response rate. After you send the initial, "We're so glad you're interested. Thank you for reaching out to us." Then are they going to keep the conversation going with you? That's what we want to increase. And if you'll start adding value when you are going back and forth with these conversations, you'll have a much higher response rate. So a lot of us, what we do is, well, let's say we have a lead in our CRM and we haven't talked to them in a month. And so we'll just fire off a quick email. "Hi, I'm just checking in." And you don't want to do that. And we all do it, so don't feel bad. But the truth is, when you check in like that, you are kind of tipping your hand that it's a sales call. It's rather cliche. So instead of checking in, my first recommendation is share an idea or an insight with them. So if whatever their initial request to you was, whether it's about a kitchen or you're an architect and you're developing a set of, about a set of blueprints, or you're an interior designer and they're interested in redoing their master bedroom bathroom space, uh, you play off of what they asked you. And then you come back and add value by saying, hey, I see that you're interested in redoing master bedroom bathroom. Uh, Here's one of my idea books on house that showcases a number of our recent design projects. And you could flip through this and see if any of this speaks to you. One of the trends we've seen lately is ABC. And by doing that, instead of I'm just checking in to see how you're doing, which I'm basically going to ignore because I don't want to answer because I think you're trying to sell me something. You're offering me information, a little bit of education. You're offering me some ideas, some inspiration through the photos. Now I'm much more likely to respond to you.
So
So,
Meredith, one of the
yeah,
it's a great point, and one of the things that we always advise, we kind of talk about it, is getting the client to put some skin in the game. And
yeah,
so, getting them to work with you even before you've officially started working together, getting them to respond to an idea book or add a photo or right, do something. It's sort of like almost like an assumptive close, right? Where, hey,
yeah,
we're already working together. Doesn't this feel great? I'm, to your point, right? I'm already adding value.
yeah, that's right. And with every step they take of participating with you, they're becoming more of a fan. And ultimately, then when it's time to make the decision, that's going to be a pretty easy decision to make because you've established that relationship. So, here's just an example I've got. We talked about your need for a walk-in shower and double sinks in the master bath. So I wanted to share, and that's where, you share with them maybe a virtual tour walkthrough of one you did recently, or your idea book of master baths or whatever. But that's kind of where I'm going. So you may not have talked to this person in 3 months, but instead of just checking in, try this approach. And I bet you they'll write you back and start talking to you. All right, so the next one is solve a problem. And this is a great tool. Again, if the conversation goes a bit cold and you hadn't heard from them in a while, then you could certainly go back to a previous conversation you've had. Maybe you've had a phone call already, or they've even been in to meet with you. And you took notes and you put them in your CRM, both are which important steps in this follow-up process. It's hard to personalize when you don't have notes for each person. So you've done that, and you remember that one of their main concerns was staying under budget and completing the project on time. And so this time, when you leave a voicemail or send an email or even mail them a brochure or a handwritten note, you mention that and offer a solution. Offer, maybe I work with companies all the time that have guarantees they do, where they cost overrun and things they've put into place over time that make people feel a little more comfortable, reduces the risk, and so forth. So that could be a great something to offer them, right? So don't be afraid to bring up obstacles they've mentioned if you have a really good solution for it. In fact, sometimes the only way when you're selling to move something forward is to get the real issue out on the table. So, you have to feel it out, but this is another opportunity to converse and keep it going. Okay, the next tip I have for you is whenever you're following up with someone, make sure that your phone call, your email, even your handwritten notes have a call to action in them in the form of a question. So several years ago, my husband started playing tennis, and he had told me when we were first married that he was really good at tennis, but he wasn't actively playing, and he was referring to his high school days when he said, well, I'm a really good tennis player. And so, like most, I kind of thought, okay, I don't know how good, what are you talking about? That was high school. We're not in high school anymore. And then the next thing I know, he goes and in his division, 40 and up, with his particular ranking, he and his team go and win the state title. Like first season out playing tennis again after 20 years. And I said, wow, you really are good at tennis. He's like, I told you I'm good at tennis. The point of it is that doing follow-up and sales is a lot like a tennis match. What makes my husband good at tennis is his ability to hit the ball back and hit it over the net. Whereas when I try to play tennis, I hit the ball into the net, which stops the volley and makes it really hard to play. So when you are doing your follow-up and asking a question, you want to hit the ball over the net in the form of a question to give them a chance to hit it back to you. If your email or your voicemail or whatever is just a monologue of you talking nonstop, hope to hear from you soon, please call me, thank you, Meredith, I really don't have a reason to. But if you end it with a question of what kind of style cabinet are you considering, if you're talking about a kitchen project and you've shared an idea or insight, you've maybe solved a problem, related it back to previous conversation, and then you throw out something like this. This is not too sales sounding. It doesn't sound like a pitch. It just is a hit the ball over the net. Well, they might write you back, shaker, whatever, oak, I don't know. I mean, and get a conversation going. And that's when you have a chance to really convert it into an appointment and hopefully into a sale. Okay, a couple little notes here on follow-up in general. Please note that if it's a digital type of follow-up, meaning an email or a text, a Facebook instant message, any of those digital forms, digital communication has no tone to it. So you have to give it a tone. If you think about how many times you've read an email and completely gotten the wrong impression of how the other person was feeling, once you talked to them, you realized and you understood each other, but at the time you got it and you thought, wow, they sound really mad. And they weren't mad at all. So you just have to, you don't want people to infer a tone. You want to give it a tone. And the tone you want to offer is a friendly tone. Okay? We want you to come across as friendly, approachable, relatable, enthusiastic. So what does that mean practically speaking? Well, that means don't use acronyms that the average consumer who might be thinking of doing a project wouldn't know. You want to speak in layman's terms that are relatable. At the same time, be sure to let folks know of your expertise. So in that email signature, if you have a designation, if you've earned a house badge over the years, I've got clients that have earned many of these over the years. And we're always very proud to post them on their website or on their email signature. Let people know what your credentials are. So that expertise is important, but above all, especially with digital, you want to have a conversational tone. So I often tell people, write like you talk, except for some of you will need to clean it up a bit. But for the most part, just if you're going to write an email, in other words, what I'm saying, don't write one that sounds like a formal letter, because that doesn't sound relatable. And people will think this is a sales letter. We've all gotten those emails. this is a sales letter. I probably have 10 of them in my spam folder just today. And that's the problem, is someone will think you are spamming them, when in fact, you're simply trying to respond to their inquiry. So that's one of my things I love to tell people is make sure when you write them back, if you don't have a phone number, if you have a phone number, call. But if all you've got is an email and you go to write them back, make sure you let them know we received your request for more information and we are happy to provide that to you. So, but again, write it conversationally. You don't want to write, thank you for your inquiry. A team member will be responding to you in 24 hours. Like that sounds like a form letter. And I'm not going to respond to that. I'm going to delete that. Whereas if you write back immediately, oh, we're so excited. Thank you for reaching out to us through House. We're thrilled that you love our photos. We are so proud of our work and we can't wait to share more of it with you. Tell me about your project. See, there's my hitting it over the net. If you do that, they're going to write you back. It's amazing like that. Because digital communication doesn't have a tone, also, you got to amp up the friendliness. A good friend of mine, Carrie Mulcrone, out of the Twin Cities, who is a sales trainer in the new home space, coined this phrase, can they hear your smile? Can they hear your smile? You know, so if I get a piece of digital communication, does it make me smile? And I'm not talking about emoticons and emojis. And I'm not talking about pink font that, no. We want professional looking follow-up with easy to read fonts, both in color and style, but the tone says, I'm friendly, I'm approachable.
Meredith.
All right, now, yeah, Liza, yeah.
One additional best practice I can throw in there for House, you know, on every business profile on House, there's a place for a profile picture, and some businesses, you know, choose to use their logo, but we always recommend that you put a smiling photo of yourself or your team there, because that's the first time they're sort of meeting you, and then when they do pick up the phone or reach out, that's the face that they have in mind for the conversation. And so,
yes,
you know, not only do you want to do it in your actual communication, you know, when you're interacting them by phone and by email, but having that photo, that human face, gives it that human connection that I think you're getting at here, of kind of humanizing that conversation and making them feel like they're meeting you in person, even though you're doing it digitally.
Yeah, the idea with digital communication is you want them to feel like you're reaching that you are reaching out through the monitor to shake their hand and say hello, right?
Yep,
So
exactly.
Yeah, again, think about it as if you were in a retail space and you walked into a store. If the person that greeted you said, welcome to Target, thank you for your inquiry, and like read you a form response, what would, I mean, you go, what? You know, and some stores actually script out that, well, that greeting so much that it kind of feels a little, you know, like a script. And we just don't respond well to that. Homebuyer 2.0 wants it personalized. So yeah, by all means, please have an up-to-date, friendly, approachable, but professional photo on all your profiles online. Okay, so you've done all of these great things. You have followed these things, and for some reason, you still have not connected with the person. You still haven't heard anything. What do? Well, that's when you change the channel. So if you know for a fact that somebody prefers to speak by phone, then you need to match the channel that they prefer. But if you don't have enough information, it's the inquiries early on, and the only thing, again, you have is an email, then, you know, you have to use the channel that they've given you. But once you get to talking with them, it's important to find out early on, how do they prefer to communicate? I have clients that really only respond when I text. I have some that actually talk to me through Facebook Messenger, and I have to remember to open that and look at it. So there are many communication channels out there, and you want to match the one that the client prefers. If you have a couple channels that they've given you and they're no longer responding one way, then change the channel and try a different one. I'll also give you some best practices. If you have a phone and an email, they've indicated it's even okay to text them. So you have several options available to you. There are some best practices on when to use what channel. If you need to communicate something, a piece of information where the tone really matters, maybe you have a little bit of bad news or something to break to them, and you need them to hear you very clearly about how you understand the issue, then pick up the phone. Just pick up the phone. It's so much better to deliver that kind of communication via phone. If it's some kind of communication that you need to document what you're saying and you want it documented in writing, then certainly emailing is good for that. And in some cases, where the tone matters, you might want to pick up the phone and let them hear your voice, and then you follow up with an email to document it. If you need to document it, but you also sending bad news via email is never a great choice, because they'll just fire something back off to you and we're off to the races. If you need just a quick confirmation, are we still meeting at 5 o'clock? Are we still talking today at 2 o'clock by phone? Texting is great for that, just quick confirmations. If it's something you want them to share, then you might communicate it through social media by either tagging or the messenger apps. And if you really want to knock their socks off and blow them away and show a lot of thoughtfulness, then send them something through the good old United States postal mail, good old snail mail. We don't do that as much anymore. And if you really want to impress somebody, write them a note or send them a card or a postcard or something like that. Okay. So as we've talked through these principles, strategies, tips, Liza, what I hope that people will gain from this is just thinking through, where am I now with my follow-up? You might want to document your percentages and start to know your numbers. For example, how many inbound leads do I get a month? Out of that total number, how many am I converting to an appointment or to a phone call? And then out of that number, how many am I converting into a new customer? That would be a great next step if you don't know those numbers already. If you do know those numbers and you want to improve those numbers, then looking at this and saying, okay, which one of these strategies do I want to pick out? Don't try to do them all. It's too much. But you can pick one, and you could say, well, I want to focus on a faster response, or I want to focus on including a call to action every time, or I think I need to do more adding value and not just checking in. So any of those things would be next steps. What are some of the next steps you heard that you think might be good, Liza?
Yeah, I think those make a lot of sense. I think taking stock of where you are makes a lot of sense. And actually, I was kind of reviewing some of the questions coming in, and Kevin from Atlanta, I guess when he takes stock, he says, my wife tells me that I sound kind of harsh on the phone, but that's just him. You say to match the tone of the client, but maybe I'm a little tone deaf. How can I learn to match someone else's tone better, right? So taking stock may also be something like this. What do you
Yeah.
suggest as a next step?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we don't expect anyone to completely transform their personality, but we do want to match and mirror people. So if you get somebody on the phone who ask you about your weekend and you'd rather just get right to business and talk about the project, you might take a beat and answer them and then respond back in kind. And then you can move along to getting to that. So there's also some really good personality and behavioral profiles out there. DISC, DISC is one of them. And if you can find that kind of training in your local area, there's always trainers. If you Google that in your area, and they'll teach you the 4 communication styles, and they'll teach you specifics on how to match and mirror better. And those kind of tools can help you become a little more aware of what your primary style is, and then give you some quick little tips to help you tweak it just a touch so that you can be more effective.
Yeah, and it sounds like, if you once you maybe start to do a little research on that, practicing with somebody safe, like a spouse or a business partner, could be a good first step to getting better
Yeah,
at that.
that's right. Yeah. I mean, I think just knowing that maybe that is how you come across is awareness is everything, right? And so just trying to moderate that a touch is great. I do have resources at this link, meredithspeaks.com/house. I'll have slides and links, resources, things that were mentioned. So, folks are welcome to visit that, learn more about me, and get some additional resources that I use that have helped me get better at follow-up over the years. So, any other questions come in or anything else we want to cover?
I think we've got time for one more. I know we've focused, we've got Laura in LA, and she was saying, we've kind of focused on that initial communication, but I've had several instances, she says, where the homeowner signed the contract, provided the deposit, but then disappears when it's time to start making decisions to get the project going. How do I get them to respond? Like, what's the right channel? Is there a right channel? What do you recommend?
Yeah. So this is, if I'm understanding correctly, this is somebody that's already under contract.
Yeah, they're
And
already
is it,
under contract. And yeah, we hear this kind of frequently for pro. Sometimes people just kind of go dark for a while. I don't know if they get busy or get
yeah,
caught up with other things, but trying to get them to kind of re-engage and keep things on schedule and on track, it can be a challenge.
yeah. So I would definitely first check that you're using the client's preferred communication channel and not yours. Because most of us have a preferred channel. I'm definitely an email person, not as good with the phone. I know that about myself. It's something I have to work on constantly because I have clients that I know are phone people. And if I really want to get them, I've got to pick up the phone. And then there are people that are text. So it's really incumbent upon us to be that flex person to match and mirror their communication channel. If you're doing that and you're using the channel that they've stated that they prefer, that's tough. You could try changing up the wording, or maybe you need to build in business processes into your contracts that require people to meet certain deadlines to keep things moving. And that may be a project management issue as much as anything. If you can rule out a communication challenge, then how you do those from the beginning and the expectations you set, that may be falling more in that category.
Makes sense. Terrific. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. And again, if we didn't get to your specific question, we absolutely will follow up with you individually. A huge thank you to Meredith for this incredible information. We'll be sending a follow-up email to everybody with that URL that she provided and some additional relevant best practice resources that you can arm yourself with. And again, we hope you'll join us on our next webinar and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.